In the mainstream view of mental health, we're told that mental illness is caused by a chemical imbalance or other biological dysfunction of the brain. In this video, we're going to talk about what is the true cause of these behavioral difficulties that often end up with a mental health diagnosis. Is mental health a myth? Thank you so much for joining me today, Mark.
I'm glad to be here.
So, I know that it is a difficult topic to approach, the myth of mental illness, and whether or not these so-called mental illnesses are actual physical problems with the person's body. What is your take on this whole topic?
Well, first of all, I don't like to call them mental illness.
I agree.
Because I call them mental difficulties, just for that reason, because first of all, you have to understand the psychiatric profession, they're trying to call it illness and physical and all this, because then for various reasons, but a lot of has to do with insurance, trying to, I think, I don't know exactly what the laws are now, but it used to be that if it was considered not a physical illness, then you could get only $5,000 a year in insurance money or something like that. So, but if it was a physical illness, like a heart attack, you could, get $300,000 for surgery or something like that. So the psychiatrist had that angle, that's one thing. But really, what caused those mental difficulties, that's what we have to look at. And to give a simple example, when, let's say you've been married to the same person for 50 years and you're in love and all this, and that person died, well, you will feel sad. Now, the psychiatrists like to refer that to being depressed, right? And then they say, well, she's depressed, or he's depressed, and he needs a pill. Well, that's not true, okay? Because first of all, everybody knows that, you will feel sad when someone dies, and that is not a mental illness. It is not a problem, it's a normal living situation. The psychiatrists have a tendency to take normal situation or normal behavior and put them into a psychiatric illness.
Right.
If you look at the famous DMS, I mean, diagnostic mental, that famous book where they have all those mental illness all coded, right? A lot of them are very ridiculous, because, for instance, they call it math syndrome if you cannot do math. Well, if you look at it, if you cannot do math, it's probably because nobody taught you properly, So you got to be very careful of that. I have a lady that says her son was put on Ritalin at the age of 4 because he could not learn properly. And I asked her, did it occur to you or anybody that he might not know how to learn, how to study? And she said, yeah, that probably was the problem. The poor kid was now 13 years old, had been on drugs all his life. And then, of course, when you take Ritalin, it's an addictive drug. So you tend to get into street drugs, and there you go. Your whole life is, down the drain. So that is very difficult to stand for, with a mother. The mother wasn't really sad about all this, of course. It's very difficult. So the guy had a difficulty. He could not learn. But the solution, how is it like giving a chemical would help the person to learn?
Right.
Because the medication, most of them, they sedate somebody or they speed up somebody, right? So anyway, they did not have the right technology, the right understanding of the mind to be able to do anything about that. And that's very often the point. You have someone that has anxiety, for instance. Okay, what is anxiety? Okay, then there's where we have to be able to see both sides of the picture. You could have a thyroid deficiency or malfunction or something like that, and that could cause anxiety. It's a physical thing. It could be. Now, what you need to do is to see a real doctor, not a psychiatrist, so that he would find why is your thyroid acting the way it is, and then find the proper medication, the proper nutrition to put this back in order. And then you might not feel the anxiety anymore. But you could have anxiety because you're stressed at work, or you're afraid you're going to lose your job or lose your family or whatever. That is a mental anxiety. It's not connected with anything physical.
Right.
So you have to understand. We have to understand what the mind is. See, the mind is basically a recording of all your past experience. The mind is a recording device. It records what's going on with you. So everything that happened to you in your life, you recorded it. And the problem is that sometimes some of those recording comes back. It's very easy to understand because if you lost somebody 5 years ago and you were very sad at the time, and then you haven't thought about it for the last couple of years, and I'm sitting here with you and I start telling you about, asking you about that person, well, the sadness comes back.
Right.
It's not a new sadness. It's that old sadness of 5 years ago that comes back. So the mind can bring things back. Let's say, for instance, you were going out with a boyfriend and he dumped you very badly. Well, 2-3 years later, you meet a new boyfriend, you might have anxiety. Because now but the experience that happened in the past comes back.
This fear
Yeah.
of the same thing happening.
Exactly. Now, there was a genuine fear. It was normal to feel bad when the boyfriend dumped you. It's not a mental illness. It's not a mental illness to feel happy. It's not a mental illness to feel fear or sadness or anything, anger. It's not a mental illness. It's only a problem when it's not when it's supposed to be. Now, for instance, I'll give you an example, anger, right? Let's say you're talking to a friend and all of a sudden he blows up in your face for no reason. So why, what happened there, Well, the only thing that happened is you might have said something, or you might have reminded him, or maybe something around reminded him of something in the past that made him angry, and it triggered it, and then anger comes back.
Yeah.
That's fairly easy to understand. You don't have to be like, a rocket scientist to see that that's the way it works. So the mind reacts to things, around us and triggers things from the past. So that's how the mind works. Now, if you understand that, so you understand that if someone has anxiety, and you would be able, maybe the guy doesn't know why he's got anxiety, he just has anxiety. He wakes up with anxiety. The mind triggers, something got triggered. And if you're able to go back in the past and find where the trigger is, what happened, and look at it, so the mind has this property where it can actually make a difference between now and the past. You see, because, sometimes you say, it's past, forget about it and all this. Well, forget about it is not the good way to go about it. Face it is the better way. Now, how do you face it? Well, if you can go back to that moment in the past and look at it and compare it to the moment in present, with a guy guiding you, someone guiding you, then all of a sudden the mind separates both. And then the anxiety that was in the past just basically returns in the past. And the one and today's situation is today's situation. Now, if you have several of those accumulating, like let's say a guy is a failure in his job, he failed, he tried something, he failed. Then a year later, he tries again something else, he fails, and then he fails and he fails. Now you got an accumulation of failures. Now that might be so much that the guy, at one point, the mind cannot stand it anymore and try to escape all that. And you know that insanity is really an escape. It says to you, it says to the people around you, I don't want to be responsible for anything. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to care about anything. Nothing matters anymore. See, it's an escape. So the mind does that as like you could say a self-preserve mechanism, but it's not really, it doesn't really, it's not really good. It's just like, he tries to get out of everything instead of facing it. So what do we do with this guy? What happens if you give him medication? It actually now hides all this. The medication hides things, Just like when you feel sad and you take alcohol, you feel happy, Not because you fix what the sadness was, just because you buried it, right? So medication buried those feelings or those awareness or those whatever you're feeling. Now, if you try to find them, so you can go back in the past and find what the triggers was, and so you can face them, you can't anymore because you buried them. Do you see how bad it is?
Yeah.
So the medication, not only they don't work, they actually make it worse for the person to find the real reason for its condition. All right, so what do we do? Like when people come to me and they have not taken medication, psychiatric medication, it is much better because it's much easier because now they don't have that submerged thing or that hidden, all those feelings being submerged, hidden out of view. They're there. The guy has a panic attack, anxiety, right? Well, this thing you can do to get the person out of that condition. Like I said, one of it is to be able to go back in the past and face whatever happened, but sometimes it's too hard, it's too difficult for the person. So imagine that. Imagine someone who's always negative all the time. So what do? If you say to them, be positive, It doesn't work like that. It's like telling somebody, okay, now jump 10 floor, or jump 10 feet high. You can't do that. But if the person is being trained, to jump 1 foot and jump 2 feet, and then they work very hard and they do other exercise, they eventually might be able to jump 10 feet, right? It's a matter of gradual improvement. So if I tell the person, think positive or be positive, it's too fast. It's like they can't just switch from total negativity in the mind to total positive. So what if you just ask the person, for instance, to remember a time when they actually were happy, a specific time? They could say, well, I was at the beach, last year, and that was fun. And then you get the person to look at it, feel it, feel like you're at the beach and all this. And then you ask for another moment, maybe sometime when they won a contest. And then you ask for another moment, maybe sometime when they bought a nice dress, anything like that. But you keep asking question to the person, and the attention of the mind. You see, it's kind of like you got 1,000, wires that are on the negative. Now it's all wired to negative, and one of them kind of like unstick to go to the positive, because you keep talking about a positive thing that happened, and then another one, then another one. Eventually, it's just like all go to the positive side. I had a friend that was a long time ago. I had a friend that had panic attack. She would wake up during the middle of the night and just like be all over the place and could not sleep. And so her husband was thinking of bringing her to a psychiatrist. I said, no, let me help you, right? So for 3 weeks, at about 1 hour a day, I did that technique there, right? Of just like changing, asking for, things that happened to her that was good. And eventually the whole thing faded. The panic attack left. That was like 25 years ago. They never came back. You see?
Wow.
And she had so we didn't do a physical handling. We didn't give medication, but we fixed the mind. Because the mind works in a certain way. And if you know how it works, you can fix it. If you don't know how it works, you cannot fix it. That's very easy, right? So the psychiatrists, unfortunately, they don't know how the mind works. They might think they know how the brain works, but they don't know how the mind works. And that's why they have failure. So that's basically one way to look at mental illness. Now, again, there could be times where there's a physical thing. For instance, it has happened where, for instance, a guy could have a pinched nerve under a tooth that has been there for years and years, to the point where he doesn't even feel it, but it still make him really feeling bad, and he's going a bit nuts. He doesn't know why. Well, if you have a very good doctor that can find that and fix that, then the guy would feel good again. So the way you do that is like somebody come to me, and if he has not taken psychiatric drugs or drugs, street drugs, right, then we can work with them to find those things, or to change the mind gradually to a different condition without, but if while we're doing that, we don't seem to see any much result, then we do physical test. Because there would be maybe mineral deficiency, vitamin deficiency, some glands that don't work properly. For instance, that the adrenal gland, if it gets to a certain point where it's not working, the guy can go like catatonic. I've seen that, The guy goes catatonic and it's just like nothing, right? So of course, giving a psychiatric medication won't do anything. You got to now give the proper supplement nutrition so that the gland starts functioning again. But now you have to ask the question, why did the gland get to that point? The body is very resilient, right? You could work really hard, you could eat like junk food, and some people are never affected. But some people are affected, right? It's very interesting, right? Because what is the difference between one person, one person could eat 1 spoon of sugar and go totally hyperactive, and the other one is just eat sugar all the time and nothing happens. Same body, right?
Right.
So the mind has something to do with that. The mind has something to do with that. So the person that becomes hyperactive on 1 spoon of sugar might have something in the past that has kind of like put her on the edge. And it takes just a little bit more to just, right?
Yeah.
So you could fix the sugar intake. You could say, don't take any more sugar, and she will feel a bit better. But you also should find all those things that made her on the edge. Do you see?
So that's really what you do at Life Center for a New Tomorrow.
Exactly.
Is addressing, let's look at are there painful memories? Is there grief in the person's life that maybe has been ignored? Or, this idea of facing our emotions and facing our traumas or our painful memories is something that, I think for a lot of us, we don't really have any reality with that because our whole kind of lifestyle in this day and age we're living in is very fast paced, is always thinking to the future, is not spending the time to take care of ourselves, to take care of our emotions. And especially if something traumatic happens in our lives, we just kind of fast forward, move on to the next thing, try to ignore it. Where in many cultures, if, for instance, the loss of a loved one in the family, when there's a loss of a loved one, the entire town honors the loss of that family. The people in the family are, given all this time off of work, time away from having to just deal with the daily activities or whatever. Here in the United States and most Western countries, there's nothing like that.
That's right.
If you were to lose a loved one, you have to go to school the next day. You have to go to work the next day. There is no consideration that you would need support, not only from your family, but maybe even from your community, from your friends, to help you through this traumatic thing you've been through. And so largely, I think this country is full of people who are just not handling their emotions, not taking the time to honor those emotions or the grieving process. And as you said, these memories and traumas, as they kind of pile up, and then something in the real world, something in real time kind of triggers that memory. I think PTSD is a great example of that, where the person's memory, the person is so haunted by those memories that hearing a loud noise or maybe even seeing a flicker of light or something can actually trigger the mind back into that memory, and they have a very physical reaction, the anxiety attack or whatever, a very physical reaction just to that memory kind of being.
Yeah, exactly. The mind acts on the body very strongly. So some people might think, oh, well, you're just imagining, or it's not imagination. The feeling is real.
Yeah.
The person is really feeling bad, but it's because the mind is pushing that on the person, right? It is good if you have somebody that knows how the mind works and knows what to do, how to get to those passive and how to untrigger them, how to get them out of your way. And at the Life Center for New Tomorrow, we know how to do that. And there's more explanation on that in that video on the Life Center for New Tomorrow as such. So, but it is doable without medication to be much more happy and to get rid of those past triggers.
And I've actually done several interviews with Dr. Colin Ross, and he has a book called Trauma Model Therapy. So he has developed this entire kind of approach to helping people do just that, handle those memories, those traumas that oftentimes are kind of just in our subconscious. The person probably doesn't actively know, man, this memory is driving me crazy. Man, this traumatic event is really, it's a subconscious.
Exactly.
But I think it's so important what you said about recognizing that the mind can cause physical effects in the body.
Exactly.
So those emotions and those feelings do cause physical changes and physical reactions. So the feelings and emotions that the person's experiencing are very real, but they're not rooted in a physical dysfunction of the brain or a physical chemical imbalance.
That's right.
But actually is kind of this product of the mind, causing those changes and causing those reactions as kind of a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it ends up being kind of unfavorable behaviors and emotions as a result. So Mark, thank you so much for your time today. I definitely look forward to doing some more interviews with you today.
Me too. Thank you.
And thank you so much for watching. I truly hope that you found this video informational. We do have a lot of information on this channel to help empower you to take control of your health and happiness. So I hope you will join us in our other videos. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again next time.